Have you ever wondered how throughout thousands of years people created special rituals to protect their homes? Even before the emergence of modern locks, alarms, and security cameras, our ancestors developed amazing ceremonies designed to safeguard the hearth from all kinds of troubles and misfortunes. Today, we will embark on a fascinating journey around the world and discover 8 of the most unusual home protection rituals, many of which are still practiced in different corners of the planet. A home is much more than just a physical structure. It is a sacred space, our refuge from the chaos of the outside world, a place where we can be ourselves. This is precisely why cultures from all continents have developed complex systems for protecting dwellings, including rituals, amulets, and talismans. These ceremonies reflect the deep beliefs of peoples, their understanding of the world's structure, and the relationships between the visible and invisible worlds. Let's begin our journey in the cold lands of Scandinavia, where Vikings developed a multi-layered system for protecting their homes. The central element of this system was the ritual of attracting a guardian house spirit, known as tomt in Sweden, or nisa in Denmark and Norway. When establishing a new house, Vikings performed a complex ceremony during which they placed a wooden figurine carved from a sacred tree, usually oak, ash, or rowan, into the foundation. However, few people know that the process of making such a figurine was surrounded by many taboos. Only a man who had reached a certain age and had children could engage in the carving. The tree had to be cut down on a special day of the year, usually during the winter solstice. The wood could not be processed with metal tools, only stone or bone knives were used. It was believed that any violation of these rules would make the figurine dead, unable to attract a protective spirit. After the figurine was placed in the foundation, a feeding ritual was conducted. Milk, honey, and beer were poured, and grain and bread were thrown into a specially left opening in the floor of the house. This ceremony was repeated every new moon throughout the year, after which the guardian spirit was considered fully attached to the house. Interestingly, Vikings believed in the heredity of protective spirits. If the family moved, they conducted a special ritual inviting the house spirit to relocate with them. In particularly important cases, for example, before a long sea voyage when warriors left women and children at home without protection, a more radical ceremony was performed. An animal, usually a rooster or a lamb, sacrificed to Odin with a request for additional protection was walled up in the foundation of the house. Archaeologists have repeatedly found such burials during excavations of ancient Scandinavian settlements. What is especially surprising is that these beliefs were so strong that they continued to exist even after the Christianization of Scandinavia. In peasant homes up until the 19th century, the custom of leaving a bowl of milk for the house spirit overnight was preserved, and in Iceland today, one can hear stories about Huldufolk, the hidden people who protect the dwellings of those who treat them with respect. Let's now transport ourselves to the land of the rising sun, Japan, where there exists an ancient and extremely complex home protection system based on Shinto and Buddhist principles. Twice a year, in the last days of June, Nagoshi no Hare, and December, Osugi no Hare, the oharai purification ceremony is conducted, aimed at expelling all negative energy that might have accumulated in the house. The key element of this ritual is shimenawa, a special rope braided from rice straw in a counterclockwise direction, considered sacred. During the braiding process, only the right hand is used, as the left hand is associated with impurity. Zigzag paper strips called shide are attached to the rope, symbolizing lightning, the weapon of gods against evil spirits. In some regions, branches of the evergreen, sacred sakaki tree, fern leaves and mandarins are also woven into the shimenawa, with each element having its own symbolic meaning. For conducting the complete ritual, a Shinto priest, kanushi, is invited, who dresses in special clothing and performs a ceremony lasting many hours, including purification by fire, water, and salt. Interestingly, the fire for the ritual is obtained in the ancient way, by rubbing wood against wood, and the water is taken only from sacred sources. During the ceremony, the priest uses a ritual wand with paper strips, with which he performs purifying movements over all rooms of the house. It is particularly interesting that in each region of Japan, this basic ceremony is supplemented by local traditions. For example, in Tochigi Prefecture, small straw dolls called waraningyo are placed in the house, which absorb negative energy and are then burned in a ritual fire. And in the mountainous regions of Kyushu, bouquets of special herbs are hung under the roof to repel evil spirits with their scent. In modern Japan, most families no longer perform the full version of the ritual, but many continue to hang shimenawa above the entrance to the house, as well as acquire special ofuda amulets from temples, which are placed in different rooms for additional protection. These amulets are renewed annually during temple visits in the New Year period. The next stop on our journey is North Africa, particularly Morocco, where for centuries a complex home protection system has developed, combining elements of Berber beliefs, Islam, and even Jewish tradition. The central place in this system is occupied by the hamsa and amulet in the shape of an open palm with an eye in the middle, also known as the hand of Fatima or the hand of Miriam, depending on the family's religious affiliation. Creating a genuine protective hamsa is not just a craft process, but a true sacred act. The master who makes the amulet must undergo special training and receive a blessing from a spiritual mentor. Work on the amulet begins only on certain days of the lunar calendar and in a special state of ritual purity. The master fasts for 3 days before starting work and recites special prayers designed to imbue the future amulet with protective power. The material for the hamsa is chosen depending on what exactly requires protection. Silver hamsas are considered the most universal and powerful, especially if the silver is extracted from ancient coins. Copper hamsas protect against diseases, wooden ones against fire, and those made from camel bone against drought and famine. For protection against particularly strong evil, combined amulets, including several materials, may be created. Each element of the hamsa's design has symbolic meaning. The 5 fingers are associated with the 5 main commandments of Islam or the 5 books of the Torah. The eye in the center of the palm reflects the negative gaze of the envious. The patterns engraved on the amulet's surface represent ancient Berber symbols, the meaning of which is passed from master to apprentice in oral tradition. After fabrication, the hamsa undergoes an activation ceremony including fumigation with special herbs, usually a mixture of 7 plants, among which rue, sage, and a special type of local wormwood are always present. Then the amulet is charged in the sun for 7 days, after which it is considered ready to perform its protective function. Interestingly, in the Moroccan tradition, the hamsa is placed not only above the entrance door, but also at other strategic points of the house above windows, near beds, in the kitchen, and especially in the children's room. It is believed that evil forces can enter the house through any opening, so protection must be multi-layered. In wealthy homes of Marrakech and Fez, one can see entire protective systems including the hamsa, calligraphic inscriptions from the Quran, special geometric ornaments, and even architectural elements such as a special shape of doorways, making them unattractive to jinns and other supernatural beings. Let's now move to Slavic lands, where there existed an amazing ritual of creating a one-day towel. This ritual was conducted in crisis situations during epidemics, droughts, enemy invasions, or other disasters threatening the entire community. A one-day, meaning created in a single day, towel was created by the collective efforts of all women in the village during one light day from dawn to sunset. The entire process, from processing flax to the finished embroidered product, had to fit within this time. This required incredible organisation and coordination of actions. The ritual began with a special ceremony of flax gathering. Women went to the field before sunrise, and they had to walk barefoot and wearing only long shirts without belts. Loose hair and the absence of a belt symbolized openness to interaction with higher powers. Flax was pulled out by the roots while reciting special incantations. Then the multi-stage processing began. The flax was crushed, scutched, combed, spun, woven, and embroidered. Different groups of women worked at each stage, passing the material to the next group. Throughout the entire process, strict silence was observed. It was believed that any spoken word could destroy the protective power of the future Tao. Communication was allowed only through gestures. Special attention was paid to embroidery, which had to contain ancient protective symbols. Rhombuses with dots, symbol of fertility. Crosses, symbol of the 4 cardinal directions. Zigzags, symbol of water and rain. And stylized figures of women with raised hands, image of the goddess protector. The colours of the threads also had meaning. Red symbolised life force and protection from death. Blue heavenly protection. Green connection with the plant world and rebirth. When the Tao was ready, a final consecration ceremony was conducted. All women of the village, holding the Tao stretched out, walked around the settlement clockwise with it. They stopped at each cardinal direction, and the oldest woman pronounced special incantations, calling for protection from that direction. Then the Tao was hung on a special tree, usually an oak, on the outskirts of the village or on the gates, creating a symbolic boundary between the protected space of the community and the dangerous external world. Historians note that during the cholera epidemic of 1830, in some villages, the creation of a one-day Tao actually coincided with the cessation of the disease's spread. Modern researchers explain this by the fact that collective action and self-isolation of women during the ritual could really hinder the transmission of infection. Amazingly, elements of this ritual were preserved in some remote villages of Russia, Belarus, and Ukraine until the middle of the 20th century. In 1920, ethnographers recorded the performance of this ritual during a drought in several villages of the Smolensk province, and in 1941, with the beginning of the Great Patriotic War, in some villages of the Arkhangelsk region, women created one-day towels to protect their sons and husbands who had gone to the front. Now let's transport ourselves high into the mountains of Tibet, where a complex system of colourful prayer flags called lungta, which translates as wind horse, is used to protect dwellings. This tradition has its roots in the ancient Bon religion that preceded Buddhism, but was eventually integrated into Buddhist practices. Tibetan prayer flags are small rectangular pieces of cloth in 5 colours strung on a rope. Each colour corresponds to one of the 5 elements. Blue, or light blue, symbolises sky and space, white air and wind, red fire, green water, and yellow earth. The sequence of colours is of fundamental importance and must always be observed in this order, symbolising the harmony of all elements of the universe. Sacred mantras, prayers, or images are printed on each flag. In the centre, there is often an image of Lungta, the mythical wind horse, carrying on its back a wish-fulfilling jewel. In the corners of the flag, 4 sacred animals, symbolising the 4 directions, are usually depicted. Tiger, east; snow lion, north; Garuda; bird, human, west; and dragon, south. Each of these creatures possesses special protective qualities. The making of prayer flags is a sacred process requiring adherence to certain rules. Traditionally, the fabric for flags is dyed with natural dyes, and the print is applied by hand using wooden blocks passed down from generation to generation. Before manufacturing, the master must purify himself physically and spiritually, and the process is accompanied by chanting mantras. It is believed that flags created in a state of negative emotions will not only fail to protect the home, but may attract unfavourable energies. Hanging the flags is a separate ritual, preferably conducted on special days of the Buddhist calendar. The most favourable is considered to be Losar, Tibetan New Year, or days associated with Buddha Shakyamuni. Flags are hung on the roof of the house, forming lines going from the four corners to the central pole. During the installation of flags, a special prayer is recited, invoking protective forces and blessing for all inhabitants of the house. According to Tibetan beliefs, when the wind moves the flags, the prayers written on them spread in all directions, blessing not only the house and its inhabitants, but also all living beings to whom this wind reaches. Thus, a constantly operating protective field is created, repelling evil spirits and attracting favourable energies. An interesting feature of this tradition is that flags are never taken down. It is believed that as they fade and deteriorate under the influence of the elements, the prayers and blessings contained in them are fully released into space. When the flags become completely worn out, new ones are hung next to them. The old ones are either left to decay naturally or burned in a ritual fire, but never thrown away as garbage, since sacred texts are printed on them. In Latin America, especially in Mexico, an amazing amulet called Ojo de Dios, the Eye of God, is widely used to protect homes. This woven cross-shaped talisman has an ancient history dating back at least 2,000 years. Originally, it was part of the spiritual practices of the Huicholan indigenous people living in the mountainous regions of Mexico. After the arrival of Spanish conquistadors and the imposition of Christianity, this pagan symbol was reinterpreted and integrated into the new religious system, receiving the name Eye of God. A traditional Ojo de Dios is created by crossing two sticks, usually made of willow or another flexible wood, and wrapping them with coloured threads in sequence. The process begins from the centre and moves in a spiral toward the outer edge, creating a diamond-shaped pattern. The colours of the threads have symbolic meaning. Blue protects from evil forces, red provides life energy, yellow attracts solar blessing, green is connected with fertility and well-being, and white symbolises purity and spirituality. In the Huichol tradition, creating the Eye of God is not just a craft, but a spiritual practice. The weaving process is accompanied by prayers and a special meditative state. It is believed that the master puts part of his soul into the amulet, and this is precisely why the Ojo de Dios has the ability to protect the home and its inhabitants. Each movement during weaving has a sacred meaning. The first cross symbolises birth and the gradual expansion of the pattern, spiritual growth, and the expansion of consciousness. Particularly interesting is the tradition of creating multi-level eyes of God for children. When a child is born, the first, smallest level of the amulet is created. Then each year, on the child's birthday, a new, wider level is added until the child turns 5 years old. It is believed that at this age, the soul fully connects with the body, and a strong connection with the spiritual world is established. The complete 5-level amulet acts as a protector of the child's soul during this critical period. In some regions of Mexico, there is a tradition of embedding a small mirror in the center of the Ojo de Dios. Such an amulet is called Ojo Espejado Mirrored Eye, and is considered especially powerful as it not only reflects negative energies, but also returns them to the sender. Sometimes bird feathers, pieces of bone, or shells are also woven into the amulet, with each of these elements enhancing a certain aspect of protection. Placement of the Ojo de Dios in the house also follows certain rules. The main amulet is hung above the entrance door, directed with its base inside the house to attract blessing, and with its sharp ends outward to repel evil. Additional amulets are placed above windows and in the corners of rooms. In bedrooms, eyes of God are hung above beds to protect sleepers from nightmares and negative influences. In modern Mexico, these colourful talismans can be seen in almost every home, not only in rural areas but also in urban apartments. Many families maintain the tradition of making them, passing the weaving technique from generation to generation, and thereby preserving the connection with the ancient spiritual practices of their ancestors. The next home protection ritual takes us to West Africa, where many tribes, particularly the Yoruba in Nigeria and the Beninese in Ghana, practice a complex ritual of creating protective masks called ngema. These masks, installed above the entrance to the dwelling, are considered not just symbols, but receptacles of real protective spirits ready to repel any threat to the home and its inhabitants. Creating a ngema mask is an extremely complex process, surrounded by many rituals and taboos. Only specially trained masters who have undergone many years of initiation and received the blessing of tribal elders can engage in it. The mask-making master occupies a special position in the tribal hierarchy. He is considered a connecting link between the world of humans and the world of spirits. The process begins with selecting a suitable tree. This cannot be just any tree. Only certain species considered sacred are suitable for creating a mask. Before cutting down the chosen tree, a special ceremony is conducted, during which the master communicates with the spirit of the tree, explaining for what purpose it will be used and asking permission for the cutting. Offerings are left at the roots of the tree, usually palm wine, cola nuts, and eggs. After the tree is cut down, the direct process of carving begins. The master works in a state of ritual trance achieved through special chants, dances, and sometimes the use of psychoactive plants. It is believed that in this state, the hands of the master are guided by the spirits of ancestors, helping to create a mask perfectly suited for protecting a specific house. Each element of the mask has symbolic meaning. Wide open eyes symbolize vigilance, bared teeth, readiness to repel an attack, horns connection with the forces of nature, and special patterns applied to the mask's surface represent ancient protective symbols, the meaning of which is known only to the initiated. Often masks are decorated with natural materials, bird feathers, to invoke protection from the heavens, animal fur for connection with the power of earthly creatures, shells to attract the blessing of water spirits. After the carving is completed, the mask undergoes a ceremony of revival. The tribal shaman conducts a ceremony lasting many hours, during which the mask is sprinkled with special herb infusions, fumigated with smoke from sacred plants, and fed with sacrificial blood, usually using the blood of a rooster or goat. During this ceremony, ancient incantations are pronounced, calling upon the protective spirit to enter the mask. Installing the mask above the entrance to the house is also accompanied by a special ritual. The inhabitants of the house must conduct a purification ceremony, after which the eldest man of the family asks the mask to protect all who will live under this roof. From this moment, the mask is considered not just a wooden product, but a living being requiring respect and care. One of the most amazing aspects of this tradition is the annual festival of mask renewal, which is usually held before the beginning of the rainy season. During this celebration, all masks are removed from their places and carried in a solemn procession through the village. Shamans conduct rituals to recharge the protective energy of the masks, and residents perform special dances and songs expressing gratitude to the protective spirits. After the festival concludes, the masks return to their places, having received a new charge of spiritual power for the coming year. Our journey concludes in Green Island, where ancient Celtic traditions of home protection have been preserved for thousands of years. Even after the adoption of Christianity, the central element of this system is the threshold and hearth ritual, based on the belief that these two places in the house are boundaries between the ordinary world and the world of spirits. In ancient Celtic cosmology, the threshold of the house was considered a special transition zone, a place where different realities intersect. That is why primary attention was paid to the protection of the threshold. When laying a new house, iron items, horseshoes, knives, nails, or protective symbols, specially forged by a blacksmith, were buried under the threshold. Iron was considered a metal unpleasant for fairies and other supernatural beings who, according to beliefs, could not cross an iron boundary. Interestingly, the position of the horseshoe was of fundamental importance. If it was buried with ends pointing upward, it symbolized a cup collecting luck. If ends pointed downward, it meant that misfortune flows off the house. Different regions of Ireland preferred different variants, and this often became the subject of heated disputes between neighbours from different areas. But not only iron was used to protect the threshold. In some areas of Ireland, there was a tradition of placing bottles with a special mixture under the threshold, the so-called witch bottle. Sharp objects, needles, broken glass, thorns, hair and nails of the house inhabitants as a symbolic representation of their essence. Herbs with protective properties, thistle, rowan, St. John's wort, and often the urine of household members. It was believed that this strong smell repels supernatural beings, were placed in such a bottle. The bottle was sealed with wax and buried under the threshold or walled into the wall near the entrance door. Archaeologists regularly find such bottles during excavations and restoration of old Irish houses, with some of them dating back to the 17th, 18th centuries, which testifies to the long preservation of this tradition. The home hearth was considered an equally important place of power. Fire in the Celtic tradition was perceived as a living deity capable of protecting the house from evil forces. When establishing a new house, coals taken from the hearth of the parental home or from the dwelling of the most respected member of the community were placed in the foundation of the hearth. This ritual symbolized the continuity of protection and blessing passed from generation to generation. Ancient Irish people believed that the fire in the hearth should never completely go out. At night, coals were covered with ash to preserve the smouldering heat until morning. If the fire did go out, it was considered an extremely bad omen, and a special ritual of its revival was required. One could not simply light a new fire. One had to go to neighbours and ask for coals from their hearth. And this had to be done by a woman, barefoot and with an uncovered head, as a sign of humility before the spirit of fire. Particularly interesting are the rituals associated with the hearth that were conducted on the eve of important Celtic holidays. For example, on the night of Samhain, modern Halloween, all fires in the house were extinguished and then relit from a common sacred bonfire kindled by druids. It was believed that in this way, the hearth received special protective power for the upcoming winter period. Special protective herbs and materials were also placed in the hearth. The wood of rowan, considered a sacred tree protecting from witchcraft, was burned on special days of the year. Fern leaves collected on the night of the summer solstice were added to the fire for protection from fairies. In some areas, there was a custom of occasionally throwing a pinch of salt into the fire, which was supposed to repel evil spirits, with the characteristic crackling and flashes of flame. Amazingly, these ancient rituals did not completely disappear even with the advent of Christianity. They were transformed, acquired new religious justification, but their essence remained the same. Thus, the protection of the threshold with iron items turned into the custom of hanging a forged cross above the door. And herbs and candles blessed in church began to be thrown into the hearth fire. On St. Bridget's Day, February 1st, which replaced the ancient festival of Imbolc, Irish women still today weave special crosses from straw or reed, which are hung above the entrance door to protect the home. These traditions were especially persistently preserved in remote rural areas of Ireland. Even in the 1950s, ethnographers recorded cases when ancient rituals of threshold and hearth protection were observed during the construction of a new house, although the participants could no longer always explain the meaning of their actions. And in some Irish families, there still exists a tradition when moving to a new house of first carrying something iron, such as a poker or horseshoe, and bringing coals or ashes from the old hearth. All these amazing home protection rituals from different corners of the world remind us that a home has always been and remains something more than just a physical structure. It is a sacred space, a microcosm reflecting people's ideas about the world order, a place where material and spiritual dimensions intersect. In each of the traditions we have examined, there is deep symbolism and an understanding of the home as a living organism requiring special care and protection. In these beliefs, a home is not just a set of walls and a roof over one's head, but a complex system of relationships between people and the surrounding world, including its invisible, spiritual aspects. And although from the perspective of modern science, many of the described rituals may seem superstitious, one cannot help but note their deep psychological wisdom. These ceremonies gave people a sense of control over an unpredictable world, created a feeling of safety and belonging. They united families and communities in joint actions aimed at the common good and passed cultural codes and values from generation to generation. What is even more surprising is that many elements of these ancient traditions continue to live today, albeit in a changed or simplified form. We hang horseshoes above doors, place protective symbols and amulets, conduct housewarming rituals and space cleansing. Even in our high-tech world, we intuitively feel that a home is more than just a place for sleeping and storing things. Perhaps in these ancient rituals there is wisdom worth preserving, an understanding of the home as a sacred space requiring not only physical but also spiritual care. In a world where people increasingly change their places of residence and lose connection with their native places, these rituals remind us of the importance of creating deep, meaningful connections with the space in which we live. Regardless of whether we believe in the effectiveness of ancient protective rituals, they allow us to touch the centuries-old wisdom of our ancestors, better understand the cultural diversity of humanity, and perhaps rethink our own attitude toward the home as a simple, utilitarian space. Perhaps our dwellings need not only reliable locks and alarms, but also that special sense of security and sanctity that these ancient rituals created. Thank you for embarking with us on this fascinating journey through the world of unusual home protection rituals. We hope these stories have inspired you to look at your own home with different eyes, and perhaps create your personal rituals that fill your living space with special meanings and energy of protection, love, and harmony. In the end, regardless of culture and era, all these rituals are united by one thing: the human desire to create a safe, harmonious space for themselves and their loved ones, protected from all the adversities of the surrounding world. And perhaps this aspiration itself contains the strongest magic, the magic of transforming an ordinary structure into a true home.